All right, today is March 28th. It is our Housing with Service annual monthly meeting. Welcome, everybody. And as is our custom, we will start out in a prayer. So please join me if you choose. Glorious and blessed God, we place our work and ourselves into your hands. Anoint our creativity, our ideas, our energy, so that even the smallest task may bring you honor. God, when we are challenged, guide us. When we are weary, energize us. May the work that we do and the way that we do it bring hope, life, and courage to all with whom we minister within this organization. Bless our administration with wisdom and discernment, our employees and providers with commitment and compassion, residents and their families with courage and strength. Rooted in your love, may your face illuminate all activities done in your name. Amen. Okay, acknowledging some transitions here as we always do. We have Marshall, and I don't know how to pronounce it, Gaultier, I think, who is Duluth Marywood, I think all of Duluth, ALDON. We have an interim DON down in Madonna, Sheila Fawcett, and Tasila Oni, I'm not even going to try. We have a new director of nursing who will be starting shortly in Windermere Way. And once we are able to welcome her, I will be able to pronounce her name and learn from her. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and start out. We've got Jana on the line. And I asked Jana to come, and I think Dr. Neil may also be on the line. Are you on, Neil?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. So there was a lot of emails going around. Somebody had sent out a question about where did they document their code status. And so we had an offline conversation with Jana and Dr. Neil and some other folks, just kind of solidifying what do we want to be the standard as far as where we document. And some other questions came up too. So Jana's going to go ahead and start, and Dr. Neil is going to weigh in, and they're just going to cover again some updated information on the code status and where we document it. So Jana, do you want me to go to eSource?
Can you guys hear me okay? I feel like there's an echo.
Yeah,
we can.
Okay, thanks. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Maybe, and Dr. B, I didn't know you were going to be on, so I'm glad you am. So I might defer to you even a little bit, just to make sure that I am still, clear on where we're at. But maybe if we start with that algorithm, are you able to pull that up? I know it was in the email that you had sent to us. If you can't, I can try to find it. Or yeah, there. Yeah, I think that this is pretty helpful, and I'm hoping that folks have seen this before, but it's just really helpful when the client moves in. If it's strictly AL, we would want to ask that person if they have an advance directive and or if they have a pulse. Now remember, they're two different things. An advance directive will lay out a person's wishes, and it can be much more specific, as it's not as medical, let's say, in an advance directive. Like our honoring choices long form that we have goes into a lot of cultural, religious, personal preferences that a person would have for their care at the end of their life. Whereas a pulse is very much so a medical order. So our associates can help with filling out an advance directive, and particularly our associates who have been trained as facilitators But our associates are not ever to complete a pulse. That is a physician's order for life-sustaining treatment, and that is an order that would come from the physician and would be filled out with the resident or their responsible party. So we want to make it, clear that our nurses, tenant services coordinators, social workers should not ever be the ones that are doing the pulse with the resident and then leaving them for the physician to sign. Then we would want to ask them if they don't have an advance directive and they don't have a pulse. Well, if they don't have a pulse, I should say, that really makes them full code, because if they're living in an apartment and they were to code, they're not breathing, heart's not beating, whatever happens, we find them on the floor and we're going to call 911. Those paramedics, unless they have an order, i.e. a pulse, they are going to treat this patient as full code. So if they don't have that, we would want to ask, what is your code status? And if they say, I don't want to be resuscitated, I would not want somebody pounding on my chest, I would not want to be resuscitated, but they don't have a code status, an order at all, or that pulse. We do have a declination of CPR form, and I hope folks are familiar with that form. But the declination of CPR is really only a temporary document that we would fill out then with that patient and have it signed by 2 witnesses, or that tenant or soon to be tenant. Then we would put that on the back of their door only until they're able to see their physician and get that pulse form completed. Now, that declination of CPR does not mean that if paramedics were to come that they're going to uphold that declination, but it does show clearly that their wishes are not to be resuscitated. And again, once they receive that pulse would go on the back of the door, and we're going to talk about that. That's where they're located. And then that declination can really be discarded because we don't need it anymore after that. So that's kind of what it talks about there at the bottom with the asterisks. And then whatever we find out that their code status is, we're going to place that advance directive if they have it, and or pulsed if they have it, and or if they don't, that declination of CPR, if they don't want to be resuscitated, in a holder, either on the back side of the resident's door. I know down at Windermere Way, we hung some up like kind of next to the door. We have a nice cover sheet that's got the Benedictine logo on it that says, advanced directives. So you just don't have the pulse right there for everybody to see. And then if they do not have an advance directive, that's when you can contact an ACP facilitator. There aren't many left around, but they could help to facilitate that advance directive. So kind of just back up to the top then, Penny. If they're simply, AL kind of without services or independent living and they're renting an apartment from us, we do have in the move-in packet a client letter that talks about all of this. We also have the advanced care planning general guide, the short form, a copy of the pulse for them to take to their provider, and then an ACP facilitator contact card if you have an ACP facilitator. And even if they're IL, we still would recommend that they place that advance directive on the back of their door or wherever the holder happens to be, because it's the exact same thing. We want to let them know that paramedics are going to treat you as full code unless you have that in place. So, we really are a little more, I would say, insistent on it in assisted living and strongly recommend it in independent living. And then we also ask that twice a year you have an ACP 101 seminar. We have not talked about that since pre-COVID. So I don't know, Dr. B, I just think that's something we kind of need to reinitiate. We have some information that can be shared, some PowerPoints that you can use, but just to let people know what an advanced directive is and why it is important to have one. So then we had a long discussion about the order, the post, the holder on the back of the door, and then also actually having an order in physician's orders. So how the Benedictine process will be is once you find out the code status, you would in Matrix put that on the banner. We know a lot of folks, that's where they look. I think that comes up like in the EMR when they're doing meds. So they'd be able to see a resident's code status if they weren't in the room to get the advanced directive or the post. We would also want that post located on the back of their door, like I said, in the holder, and uploaded into the ACP tab in Matrix. So we would have a copy of it for the nurse to be able to refer to. If the resident's in the dining room and not in their room when something happens, you know, it might be closer to get to a computer to pull up that post versus running to their room. Some of our communities are pretty big. But we do not want any type of code status put into the actual physician's order in Matrix. Like under physician's order, we would have the post, like I said, uploaded into advanced directive tab. Any questions, or please, Dr. B, anything to add?
Dr. B, can you elaborate a little bit about your thoughts on the physician order?
Sure. I think Jana did a good job. I mean, there are some amount of mental gymnastics that you have to sort of play out in your mind. And I think a lot of what this process has been developed out of is just practical scenarios. You know, did you find the resident in their apartment? Did you find the resident unresponsive in the hallway by their apartment? Did you find the resident, or did you observe or witness the resident becoming, unresponsive in the dining room or somewhere else? And we wanted to acknowledge that, time is of the essence. We know that time is tissue, specifically the heart and the brain, and yet also wanting to honor the wishes of the resident entrusted to our care. And so having the opportunity in two different places to have that truth, that source of truth about their wishes, one being the holder that's in their apartment, wherever it is, as Jana said, if it's next to the door, on the refrigerator, in another place in the holder, with the cover sheet that says advanced care planning, very nice. Or being able to go to the banner, if they're on services in Matrix Care and they're not by their room. We wanted to have that flexibility so that you can truly get to that information, the truth about their goals of care as quickly as possible, and yet make it practical. Because we heard loud and clear that some people, some associates, they're looking to the banner, or quite often or almost all the time they're looking to the banner. And then at other times, perhaps, especially if somehow you're encountering an independent living resident, to let the EMS into their room, their apartment, they're not going to have the Matrix Care banner. They're going to have either a holder that has the advanced care plan in it, or they're not. And it's up to them. It's their prerogative whether they want to use that. But I think the other thing is we acknowledge that from time to time, people come on and off services. And so we wanted a unified place of truth when Matrix Care may not be the place of truth. And so we have this sort of this yin and yang of in the apartment and in the banner. But we also wanted to acknowledge that, the post is the order or the other state-specific form. It might be an out-of-hospital DNR form. It might be for a short period of time, the declination of CPR, if you don't have the post or state-specific form. And so we want to acknowledge that is the order. It's not actually, if you don't have a post, and you have a DNR in matrix care in an order section of matrix care, that's not going to really hold water and honor the wishes of the resident when you're showing that to EMS in the independent assisted living environment. Now, that will hold water more often in the SNF, in the skilled nursing facility, but for our residential care environment, we wanted to make sure that we acknowledge the order is the document, the medical order document. It's not just having an order in matrix care, because that isn't an order really. It's sort of a smoke screen, so to speak. It really holds no weight. It doesn't really exist in that sense of a code status order in AL, and certainly not in IL. So we wanted to be logical, we wanted to be thorough, we wanted to be practical. And so that's why we have these two places, the banner and the apartment, so you can have unified knowledge there, the wishes of the resident. And the more places we put that information into the matrix care in your workflow, the more likely probability that you could have misalignment. That one might say full, one site might say DNR. And I think many of us know that all too well in many different care environments, including the SNF. And so less is more in this case. I think one last thing I'd say about the seminars is, yes, in the world before COVID, we had some advanced care planning facilitators. We could utilize them. We could engage with them. We actually have a presentation that they could utilize in a 30, 45 minute, twice a year type of offering. You can still do that if you are an ACP facilitator or if you want to be trained in how to use the presentation. But more often there might be some opportunity to engage with ACP facilitators in your region, in your local community, bring them in and actually do a one-on-one with residents and their families. I think Jan and I are also looking at doing something virtually. So we have an opportunity a couple times a year where you could actually have a virtual conversation with us, and then be able to maybe serve some hors d'oeuvres or have something around the holidays. Typically it's the Thanksgiving holiday time, or it's in National Healthcare Decisions Day earlier on. I think it's in April or May this year. So just a few words about those two areas, but hopefully this is making more and more sense. We need you to live this out every day.
So thank you to Dr. B and Jana. Again, the question came around the concern that people wanted to narrow it down to one spot because they needed to make sure it matched versus having in many spots. So, as they just said, there's two spots that it should be. It isn't in order, but we do want you to definitely have those. We talked about it quite a bit. So don't narrow it down to just one, which means you probably will need to put some sort of audit in place at some point in time to make sure that what is on the back of the door matches what is in the record. So
yeah, Penny, good point. I'm sorry that we had talked about when the nurse is doing that quarterly review, that would really be a good time to be checking the back of the door to make sure it matches what you've still got uploaded, and they haven't gotten a new post or something and you just didn't get a copy of it. They put it in the back of the door. And then to make sure the banner matches. So I think that's a really good idea when you're doing your quarterly review. And Linda, I feel like we added that somewhere to a checklist.
So for Minnesota, yes, the other states don't have checklists, and they don't do quarterlies in all communities. So
okay.
It'll be a standard that when you're doing a review, no matter what your time frame is, you should check that.
Perfect. Thank you.
And the banner, it gets on the banner by putting it on the face sheet in case people don't know that's where it drives from.
Yep. Is there any questions?
I did not see anything in the chats.
Okay, well, if you do, you can certainly reach out to Dr. B or myself. Thanks for the time.
Thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so now back on to customer service, the things that we go over every single time. We are coming to the close of our year in regard to our goal of improving our score and meeting or exceeding 54% of willingness to recommend. you all should be using the customer concern database. I do, more recently, I've been doing audits of that. I'll show you the audit, but we'll talk more about that in a second.
Penny?
Again, yes, ma'am.
There's been a couple people putting in clinical tickets. Who manages customer concern database? How do they get people added to it? And then
So-
how do you add a resident to it? We've had a few
Okay,
tickets
so I
lately.
can
if
show you
we can do
that. So the answer is Jana oversees the customer concern database. And she has, if you go into eSource and you see educational opportunities, she does periodic webinars on how to use that database. But again, if we go to eSource, and the resident is not automatically populating because the census comes from the SNF side. So if we add a concern, I want to add a resident over here under admin. Oh, it's under Benedict. That's why I have to switch it to a community. Admin.
I think it's actually under manage.
Manage, thank you. Resident days. Or
Resident manager.
Add resident manager. Thank you, you're still on, Jana. And then you can just click here and add the resident. And
Yep.
then when you go back, they will be in there and they will be put in there.
And then if
Anything on
you
when you're-
don't have access, yeah, if you don't have access, you can just go like right here. If you don't see it in blue that you have access, like Penny, hit show list, will you? Down at the bottom, show me a list. Yeah. So if Penny just clicks on something that's gray, anything, just anything that's not blue. So if you were to click on that, like this is the Leadership Institute, right? And she does not have access. So the same thing, if you went into customer concerns database and it's gray, then you would hit send request. And that's all you gotta do because it shoots me an email and then I will grant you access.
And the
Some
same
people
thing-
email me, that's fine too. But if you click on that, it's just gonna send an automated email to me to add you.
And the same thing is if you're trying to delegate it to somebody and they do not have access, they're not going to show on the list of employees. So if you've got a new nurse that you want to be able to delegate stuff to, you want to make sure the nurse goes in and asks for access, because then on the drop-down box, you can choose that person to delegate to.
And as the housing
Jana,
director, it's not a bad idea to check that list periodically to see, because you've got turnover, right? And all of a sudden we've got people in there that should be removed and people who need access. You can certainly shoot me an email and I'll make those changes for you. No problem.
Okay. And I apologize. In the beginning of this call, you may have heard a whining dachshund, and now that I have put her outside, her brother Black Lab is barking. So forgive the animals behind me. Okay, so willingness to recommend. So the customer concern database, Jana, is there a training coming up on that?
If you want to go back into eSource, I'll show people how to do it, if you don't mind, Penny.
Oh, yeah. How to look for the training or?
Yep. So if you go into, you got to get into events. So if you go up, I want to say, and then under that app thing, if you do events. 12 hour, right? Yep. And then you would see, here it is right there. Ooh, but that's supposed to be canceled. The one on the 5th is supposed to be canceled. Sorry, I'm gonna have to reach out. So the next one's gonna be in May. So any of those vulnerable adult investigation, and oh, I should have her retitle it too. Sorry, everything, there's a new administrative assistant, so we had to switch everything over. So it's vulnerable adult reporting, it's customer concerns database, and it's the suicide protocol. I go over all of that. But the one for next week's going to be canceled because it's during the ULT meeting. So the next one would be that May date. And you just go on here, you click the little, like the person and the plus, and you can register. And it's monthly.
Learn something new. Thank you, Jana.
You bet.
Okay. Again, the person-centered wellness plan is in Matrix. We went over that last time. We're not going to go over that again, but if you don't know what that is, if you're new, reach out to myself or Linda, and we can help you with that. That's a critical piece of the admissions process. And then there's the point of care compliance and the plan for focus and execute. So we're moving up to a new year. So make sure that your executive director who owns the focus and execute for you has an action item for working on the satisfaction score in the assisted living, because it's still in the strategic plan. So just make sure you, as you look at your results, that you are looking at what your scores are and what your plan is. And we'll talk more about that in a second. So I did do an audit. It looks horrible. It looks like nobody's using the database. However, I reached out to a couple of you and you said that you were using the database. So I think that there might have been an issue with the eSource. I know when you guys went in, you said it looks like you're not seeing what you thought was entered. So take a look at your database, see if it looks like what it should, and verify that, yes, we are using it and I can see it. And if you can't, put in an IT ticket and or just check again to make sure that you're using the customer concern database and that you're following up on the concerns in a timely manner. And then the Care Assist compliance. Just going to bring this up. This, again, the other satisfaction. So the two thoughts that we're going at with the satisfaction are that we are addressing the needs, that we are looking for patterns, and that's why the focus is on using the customer concern. And this is about giving you the care and services that you requested, that we are giving it timely, accurately, and appropriately. And that is what the Care Assist compliance is. It is when the aide or whoever goes into Matrix and says, this is what I'm supposed to do, am I doing it? And am I documenting to that? So it should be 100%. We can see Ada, yay, it was, good job. So if it's yellow, it means that you've got a process problem. And if it's red, it means you've got a big process problem. So take a look at your scores. I see a lot of, I don't see any red, which is great, but we've got a couple of you that dropped. Usually when it drops, it's because of pool staff and or staff turnover and a training. Linda, anything else to weigh in on reasons why it might be dropping that they should look at?
Usually it's just a turnover and the use of agency and not getting the proper training ahead of time.
Yeah. And we do have pool staff training tools. We've got our own staff training tools. So reach out to Linda if you need any help, but we really want to see everything in the green here. Because as I said, guys, just picking on Byron for a second, I'm going to say they're doing better, which is great. And it is related to turnover and they do have action plans around this. But if you asked a resident, did you get the care? We can only prove that they got 63% of the care, right? So if it isn't documented, it isn't done. And I know Brian gives great care, so it's a documentation issue. Any questions on that?
Just a side note too, that if elderly waiver, they can do a take back now for Minnesota. So if you can't prove the services that they say we're supposed to be giving, they can do a take back and we have to return some of those funds. So we do need our compliance at 100%.
Okay. So as I said, the year is coming to a close, but the priorities are not. I don't know that we will necessarily change what we are looking for to improve the customer service, particularly because the point of care is care. So that's one that we're going to continue on. But we are at the time where the AL survey is coming. The week of April 4th, the surveys will be mailed to you. We are doing it internally this year. Your person's listed as independent living or in a independent living section or building that you have will not get this, but anybody who is deemed as assisted living is going to get a survey. And so you want to prep for that. You want to check your last year's results, see where your opportunities were, see where your residents were complaining, and let your residents know, this is what I did to correct it. So I heard you, we did these actions, we're making progress, we're continuing to work on it. Let them know how you did, whether you do that through a community forum or throw a cocktail party and kind of have that as the subject or whatever you want to do. But you want to make sure not only from what their concerns were last year, but what you've been hearing this year, or in general, just what you've been doing. I mean, it's still a COVID year, so it's still kind of hard to be fully celebratory. But there's a lot of things you guys have been doing, fixed up the physical environment, brought in additional telecommunication, you know, whatever the case may be. Make sure that you're telling them, this is what I've done for you this year, and remind them of the positive things. I've seen people set up prizes, like hand in your survey and you get to draw out of the drawing to win a prize. Come to the happy hour and you know, drop off your survey results into the confidential bin, or whatever the case may be. We want to make sure that they feel good about what we've been doing. We want to make sure that we get great participation, so that everybody is getting their voice heard. And it's okay to ask for an excellent score. You know, every time I go into a store where I'm getting some customer service or I'm on the phone, the person says, you know, hey, you're going to get a survey after this. And, you know, if you think I did a good job, I'd really appreciate it if you could vote me as excellent. I see that everywhere I go. So there's nothing wrong with saying that. Hey, if you feel like we've done the best we can, and that we're really trying to meet your needs, we would love it if you would give us an excellent score. It means a lot to us. So nothing wrong with asking for that. Any questions on the survey and on the prep? Hugely important that you don't just send out that survey and leave it there. All right, so moving on to
Hey,
finance.
Penny.
Yes,
Hi,
ma'am.
Penny. It's Barb.
Hi, Barb.
I'm up in Duluth. Just a question. So our IL residents are feeling a little bit left out that they don't get to do the survey.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering, I was thinking about maybe just doing it the same basic questions, but then just internally managing the results.
You
Not
know,
ask.
that's a really good idea, because I've heard that from a couple of people. It was, you know, that who we survey was a decision, you know, weighed in by ELT. So I can't really weigh in on why it's just the AL. But I am hearing other people saying, I want to get a pulse on my ILs and my memory cares, or the memory care, I think, are being included. And so they are. I do have some samples that people can use. You can email me and I can send you a sample. And or Barb, I think that's a great idea. Just kind of, I know Gift and team worked really hard in those questions. And if you want to do something similar internally, I think that's a great idea.
All right, thank you.
Yep. And I think I can't speak for ELT, but I think, again, it was just more about resources when we did it outside, and the response rate. But, you know, many of you have very large ILs, so I think that's a great idea. Okay, so the financial report, as usual, it doesn't look great. But I think you'll see as we look through here that there is improvement, which is really positive. So we are coming out, which is wonderful. So last month, our operations, which is us, a loss of 61,000. Yes, I'm just seeing if there's zeros after that, 61,000. And so we have a $442,000 variance. Year to date, we've got almost an $8 million variance, with a loss of almost 7 for operations. And then again, total, we are at a variance of 13 million with a year-to-date loss of $12 million. So, you know, COVID is still wreaking its havoc on it. The census is still wreaking its havoc, but I think you're going to see that we're starting to rebound here. You can see that group 1, which is the stabilized communities, actually have a positive margin. Group 2 is the ones that are struggling a little bit. And as we go through these numbers, you'll see who they are. But group 3, a majority of the loss is the new startups. So Windermere Way, the Shrine, a little bit of, it still includes Northfield, though Northfield is, I don't know if you're on, Ken, I think you're almost at budget or at budget. The Shrine has a bunch of move-ins coming. Windermere Way has a bunch of move-ins coming. So there's lots of good news coming up. So don't let those numbers scare you. You can see the census coming up here, and we'll give you greater detail on that before. This is the margins. You can see the huge losses. It goes off the charts here, guys. And look at just a little tiny bit here. So definitely turning around. SNF premium payers, right up on budget. And you can see in here that a lot of where this loss is coming from is in our investment income. And as Kevin always says, I don't take credit when it goes up. I don't take credit when it goes down. It just is what it is. It never really shakes them because, as you guys know, the markets swing. And then without COVID, you know, a little bleaker picture, but we won't focus on that because that's not our reality. Okay, so again, now that we're breaking it down between the SNF and between the ALIL, you can see on both sides, we're off of census. That's really the primary. That's North region, South region. This is the nursing home census. This is ours, 909 compared to a 974, 77% occupancy compared to 84% occupancy. So a lot of you know, census opportunity remains. So I wanted to point out this, and again, I store this in the file so that you can look at this if you want to. But with all the, you know, it's COVID and things are tough, I just wanted to point out a couple of you, and there's lots of good stories here, but look at Bismarck. They're way ahead of budget here. And Duluth, rocking it off the chart here, like, you know, so there is some good news in this, and it can be done. So if you need some help, reach out. We're here to help you. If you need any ideas, reach out to these folks, to Barb and to others, to, you know, what are you doing that's making that work? So again, here's Shakopee, Windermere Way. You know, you can see, again, responsible for a majority of this. Here's the Shrine. They're actually on budget, fairly close to budget, so good job, Shrine. But you can see that they're supposed to lose a lot of money, so things will be turning around. Alrighty. So this is our ministry partners, Serenity, Villa St. Benedict. Very similar story here, where we've got some, you know, Marion looking really good here. But again, overall, and the majority of the issue is census. So any questions on the finance? Thank you, Hoda. Memory care was not included last year. Stacy sent out a memo, and I can check it, that talks about it. I think you're right. I think memory care is not included. Okay. Back to our PowerPoint, and we are going to go to the dashboard. I had up, did I lose my dashboard? I did, okay. So again, we're going to go in here. We're going to go to dashboards. We're going to change it to operations. It's just a good reminder of where all this stuff is. And in the measurements, we're going to eliminate the SNF. You can look at your whole campus by keeping these in, or you can just look at the side that is the assisted living by just clicking those out. And you can see how assisted living is doing. So again, this is the entire Benedictine team, but you can change it here to being just yourself. So safety index doing great, which is falls and medication errors.
Oh, I was just gonna ask that, what all falls in, and is that drawn from ROMP, Penny, then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So you want to make sure you're documenting in ROMP and using it for all events, not just falls. You can see here again, survey cycle, that's more of a SNF thing. So percentage excellent. This is the survey that's coming up. ALF, would you recommend? You want to get it up to 52. So we're so close. Just keep working that. Employee
Hey,
engagement.
Penny,
Yes, ma'am.
it's Barb again.
Hi.
You know, that safety index, I was just actually looking at the dashboard for Marywood, and it doesn't appear that there is a safety index for Marywood. And so I'm just wondering if there's a problem with the safety index showing up for an AL facility, who would address that?
That would be Leslie.
Okay. All right?
Yeah, this is Leslie. I think if you don't put your census number in, it will not generate a score.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Emily's been all over that. So I don't know. We'll look at it again and I'll reach out, Leslie.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Associate engagement, 90-day retention. So we've got some opportunity here. And I think, again, in all of this, it's really about making sure you're doing that full orientation, making sure you're keeping the pulse on your employees. So again, this doesn't have as much meaning because it's Benedictine wide, but make sure that you're watching this, looking at this, because this will really help you manage your opportunity. Any questions on that? All right. Census review. Somehow my eSource got closed, so I'm just gonna go ahead and we're gonna do the census. I'm gonna do the report. And what I like to look at is trends. And this is a very positive look. This is our system as a whole. You can see a huge uptick. And when you look at housing, really nice uptick. Spring is here. To me, the biggest opportunity in this where I see is moving people through the system. Make sure every single day as the housing leader, nurse and admin, that you are asking how many people who are the people in the queue and where are we at? Are we getting the evaluation done? Are the rooms turned? Did we get the finances back? Are you getting what you need? We've got tools for this that we've reviewed and we can review them again. We can hand them to you, but you want to be covering this every single day because the biggest barrier is losing people due to delays. So good trend. Let's keep it up. Any question on that? All right. So going into there have been emails going back regarding the ACH withdrawal, which is the automatic withdrawal from your checking account, and the credit card forms. And I've been getting some emails, and I also saw an email going out to your business offices from Monica that I think caused some confusion. So I just wanted to clear it up here so that everybody was on the same page. So the automatic withdrawal is something that we do definitely want to encourage 100% of our people to do, so that when month end, instead of sitting on the bill and waiting for the check to come in, it can just automatically come from their account. We do have an automatic withdrawal form in our admission documents, and encourage whoever is doing the paperwork to go ahead and ask to get that completed and obviously hand it to your business office. The difference between my understanding of the AL and the SNF is in the SNF, kind of the financial intake is managed by the BOM, and they're the ones kind of doing those forms. And so the email came out that basically said, use the form and matrix, use only the form and matrix, and kind of followed through with the process from the perspective of the BOM. So it confused people because the housing leader said, no, it's in the admission documents. That's the one that we've been told it needs to come from eSource. And so there was conflicting information coming from the support team, one from myself and the other one from the CBO. So I did reach out to the CBO to explain that we've got some conflicting information out there, and we are going to be having a meeting coming up. And so I think what will likely happen is we'll get a similar form to what is in Matrix, and we'll just update the form in eSource. And then again, the sooner we can get this, the better. But I'm going to get some clarification. The meeting is coming up. I will send out the information when I have it. But in the meantime, just kind of hold on any change in process based on that email that came out from Monica. Any questions on that? Okay. So there was also sent out to the BOM, you guys may have been CC'd, a credit card form. And so I've been getting some requests to include that credit card form in the admission. So things may change. We are working, by we, I mean the CBO is working with an agency to see if we can accept credit cards without a fee. But in the meantime, it is very expensive to allow people to charge their rent and services. So we do not want to encourage this. We do not want to put it in the admission forms. If there is a unique situation in which you must accept a credit card, there is a form that you have to fill out, and that is available through the CBO, but you won't see it in the admission documents because it's not something that, until the CBO works out a deal with a potential new vendor to reduce the fees, we don't want to encourage. Any questions on that? Okay, so I've got this for Minnesota, but it's also really a reminder to all. So most of you on this call are a part of a community. When I have been in 2 states, one of them being Minnesota and the other one being in Missouri, there was a reason that we needed to show that we had an emergency plan for assisted living. In several of these opportunities, the community thought that they had a plan. But when we looked at the plan, it was very, very specific to the SNF. So in essence, for the assisted living or the independent living, we really didn't have an emergency plan. So I just want to ask all of you to please, we want to take care of all of our residents. Emergency planning is not just a federal requirement, and in Minnesota, a state requirement. Emergency planning is how we keep our residents safe. So I ask that you go back and you look at your emergency plan and you look at your risk assessment and you make sure it is pertinent to your assisted living and or independent living. If you don't have a generator in your housing, you're going to have different answers. If you don't have a checkout sheet for your ILs, you're going to have a different answer. If you have to get medications and the medications are in the rooms as opposed to a med cart, you're going to have a different answer. So I want you to please go back, look at your emergency planning. It's summer, it's tornado time. We all know what's happening in the world, so take a look at that. And it's a couple of questions specifically to ask yourself. How do you track the location of your residents? Remember that in Minnesota, all residents are considered AL regardless of services. But in the rest of the states, if they're IL, we want to keep them safe too. So we want to include them in the plan, especially the ILs. Do they know what the plan is? Do they know how to evacuate? Do they know where they're going if they have to evacuate, right? We want to think about everybody. Verified documentation system is included in the emergency plan, so we can get to Matrix remotely. But you just want to make sure, particularly in Minnesota, these are questions that you will be specifically asked on your survey. And then in the disaster planning tools, and for the states that are not Minnesota, if you don't have access to this, I can get it to you. There is Appendix Z, which has a checklist of what to do in an emergency, or what should be included in your emergency plan. So to reiterate, in a community with a SNF, the SNF is required to meet the federal standards for the emergency planning. So it's just makes sense to make sure that that same concept of safety goes to your AL and IL. In Minnesota, the legal requirements are the same for an AL and for the SNF. So just a reminder to take a look at that. Any questions on that? Okay. Any questions on anything we've covered? Otherwise, I've got a few more things from Minnesota, but the rest we can let go. Okay. So for Minnesota, just some clarification. I had shared with you that the UDALSA, which is your list of the services that you provide, that the changes in the notification need to be given to the state. It talks about changes in notification on the UDALSA. I did reach out to Leading Age because it didn't really say who we were supposed to notify. And so I did get some clarification on that. So As Bobby, who is our representative in Leading Age, had indicated that, you know, with any change in services or agreements or what have you, we should notify the residents and give them an updated UDELSA. But we would only need to notify the state if we had a substantial reduction in services. So the AL notices to the Office of the Ombudsman and Long-Term Care as part of the regulations, if we change services or reduce services so that it would affect somebody, potentially affect their ability to live there, we have to give a notice to the Ombudsman. Otherwise, and that is the notice to the state that I was assuming was just an FYI as part of the license. Otherwise, when you apply for your new annual license, you will update your UDELSA at that time. So if there's a significant change, you update it through here. If it's just tweaking a name or spelling something differently or whatever, you can do it on an annual, you know, or if it's a minor change. And then again, if there's changes, you do want to make sure that your residents get a new updated UDELSA. Questions on that? Okay. So in talking to Leslie, a couple of things, I want to get your thoughts on this. I'm trying to look at the time here because I want to leave room for Linda as well. I've got a lot of questions on, it's great, you guys are working in your survey prep book. We want to make sure that that's done. We want to make sure that we know that it's done. So just let us know that it's done. But I'm also, so by the 15th of April, we would like you to complete your survey prep book. It's 90% done for you, so this really shouldn't be a big ask. We want to make sure that the policy and procedure book is accessible by the 15th. If it is all possible to be accessible without printing up, that would be the preferred, because we are always updating and tweaking policies and procedures. The more we get to give you the tools you need, the more we need to update things. So otherwise, again, I'll let you know when we update sections and you can update in that yearbook. And then we want the emergency plan updated by May 1st. So the question that I have for you is you can simply just email me and say, yes, I've done these things, and we'll track it. And or would it be better if you're doing the prep book and the emergency plan electronically? Is it just as easy to have me ask you to store it in a certain place on the Q drive? Because by doing that, Leslie and Ben and myself and others can take a look at it, and we can help give you advice on whether we think that it meets compliance or not. So what I'd like you to put into the chat is, you know, are you doing this electronically? Is that something that you could put on the Q drive?
Penny, you have a question
Yeah,
also.
I've seen that.
Okay.
I would send them the actual UDELSA because it's a requirement that they have the updated UDELSA. So just the changes, I think.
Thanks, Penny.
Yeah, that's a tough one because it's a pretty big document, Emily, but I would just give it to them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So you can email me too, but again, I think it would be nice. So let me know when it's done so that we can track it. Leslie and I are tracking it. But Ben had that idea and I thought it was good. And, you know, he said, you know, maybe we can just help them if they can store it in the Q drive for the survey prep book and the emergency plan. We can take a look and we can help them with any advice that may be needed. So
I think it would be great to have it on eSource or the Q drive for everyone to access that needs to.
Yeah. Because
then when we have staff turnover, it doesn't disappear when the books get thrown away.
good point.
Which has happened.
Okay, so next thing I wanted to show you is I've added some additional tools to eSource. Oops. Under people development. Remember, we kind of created this, it's a little bit of a duplicate that we created so that you guys don't have to go out and find like, where does people development hide their checklist? So we did add under just easy Minnesota AL compliance tools, disaster plans, and policy compliance tools, a ton of information on employee checklists from people development. So that is now there for you.
Is that the skills checklist also?
Or
or just annual training? No.
The annual
no
training
skills.
and
Okay.
orientation. So we could ask them for the skills. Okay. All right. And then Linda, I'll go to that section and you can talk.
So I just updated a couple things for you under the admissions. The first one being the Minnesota MD order sheet. We have not put it in your individual folders, but we did update 2 things on it. So I added the COVID boosters with dates and type. So I think once we get that opened someday, huh? Oh, there it is. So if you go to, I also put the Prevnar 20 in, and then we put in the dates of the boosters, dates given if known in the series that it was on. So that was updated. And then you'll, oh, there's one more thing on there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Nope, that's okay. And then you'll say fill out, post, and, oh, why does it say fill out, post, and send with this form? That's not what Dr. B put on there. Let me look at mine. Hang on 1 second. Yeah, let me, I'm gonna pull that one out. I'll just quickly correct that. It's supposed to be send post with or whatever. I'll check back with Dr. B's language. So we'll get that corrected, and then that will get put into your forms. And then if you go to the MD order, it's a pre-admission assessment for Minnesota. You're going to see the section down below. Let's see, we'll have to scroll down to, there's the boosters that I put in there also. When you're doing your pre-admission assessment, you can get that information. And then Dr. B updated and Jana updated the advanced directives section. Oh, right there, back a little bit. There it is. Go back right there. So you have copy on file, advanced directive. And then it says request a copy of the legal document and store in resident apartment. And then the post request copy of this medical order and store in resident apartment. So it's kind of just a reminder for those 2 things. And that was the only updates on this.
Okay, any questions on that?
And then on the checklist for you guys, when you're doing your monitoring every 90 days, I just put in there that you review the post and that it matches what you have on your face sheet. So you'll just see some updated language on that checklist. That's in the AL toolkit.
And then we added the declination of CPR form to the toolkit. We were in the process of putting it in all of your admission documents. But again, because we only want to use this in the rarest of cases, we moved it up to here. So if you ever do need to use that because their doctor appointment is next week and you just need to get by a week, forms and tools is where you find that. Okay. All right, well, we are at 3:59. I thank you for your time. I apologize for my canines. Have a lovely day and I'll see you next month.